I think the voice held up pretty well there, so thank you. Right, well, we're nearly done. So just in this last 10 minutes or so, I guess my challenge is to try and sum up a little bit what we've heard this morning, but draw it all together. And not necessarily the easiest task, because although Richard set it up as our annual board meeting at the beginning, as most board meetings, I guess, at various times we've drifted off into some very interesting topics. And it's all kind of part of the world we're now in. But to my mind, it actually comes back to one very simple question, which is as a wide set of industries, as the Advertising Association umbrella, the tripartite of brands and clients, which Keith's articulated very well, as agencies, well represented in this room, and as some of the media owners, again, well represented in this room, some who've been there a very long time, some who've only grown up in the last 5, 10, 15 years, we all have a collective stake in the kind of world we're in. And the simple question is the way we've been overseeing that world still fit for purpose? And is the kind of line in the sand that was drawn decades ago still the right place? Or in the world we've heard about all morning, actually, is there a kind of line we now need to cross, even though that brings with it some quite profound and difficult issues? And to my mind, it's actually about, are we an industry that's too full of ourselves and too arrogant to kind of face up to some of the challenges we're facing? Or are we a set of industries and organisations that actually need a bit of humility? Now, I had a good lesson in that a few years ago. We're nearly in Oscars season, and I went to the Oscars, not the year, sadly, that Channel 4 won 8 Oscars with Slumdog Millionaire. It was the year we won the Best Short Film, I think, but nonetheless, great experience. And 5 o'clock, LA, sunny afternoon, a 1-mile queue of limos dropping everyone off, the paparazzi, 500 people up there, and you go in and there's the kind of red carpet moment. And this little man, his job is to open the door of each limousine and kind of call out for the paparazzi, it's Tom Cruise, or it's Keira Knightley, or it's George Clooney. And in our case, opened the door, looked inside, scratched his head, said, it's nobody. Anyway, a good kind of reminder not to be too carried away with yourself. But we all know this is an industry grouping that's got a few egos, and we're all capable of being very arrogant. And some of the challenges that have been touched upon this morning, I strongly agree with Keith's point about the UK's positioning digitally relative to the rest of the world. We're in a strong place, but that is not guaranteed to last. And I do think the politicians in particular need to do more, and actually collectively as a society we need to do more. I think Peter Bazalgette's challenge earlier about seeing the wider strength of creative industries is a really good challenge. And again, I think probably too many people in advertising are rather too narrow on that touch. And I'm a passionate believer in the kind of importance and the kind of strength of the wider collection of creative industries. We've had a flavour of some of the kind of technology issues. We've had a flavour of some of the political issues. But the reality is, and I passionately believe this, the reality is that if we think that what we've had in place for the last 5 decades or more is still the perfect model and the way to deal with the issues going forward, we're seriously wrong. And I bring that back to one fundamental point, and that fundamental point is about actually being in touch with our public, being in touch with consumers. And if we lose the trust of the public, that is very serious indeed. And indirectly, if we lose the trust of the politicians to trust us to look after our own affairs, that's also very serious. And I don't think we have a burning platform. I don't think big decisions are going to be made this side of the election. There probably will be some interference in gambling. There probably will be 1 or 2 other areas that kind of challenged. There's this debate going on about whether there will be or won't be interference in terms of high salt and high fat things. But actually, there's more important things to worry about. Not many votes are going to be won or lost this side of May. I don't think it's a burning platform in the next 18 months. I don't think a new party or coalition is going to see this as their #1 priority in the first year. But we are on a collision course, in my view. That is extremely clear. And if we don't actually deal with that issue for ourselves, at some point, it will be dealt with for us. And actually, I hope what's come out a bit in the debate this morning is it's not actually about constraint. It's not actually about closing down opportunities. It's actually about opening up opportunities and opening up possibilities. Because this is about actually quite a tough decision. Up to now, the position we've adopted has been a relatively clear, easy position. We've defended the right to be legal, honest, truthful, etc., etc. And that's sort of it. That's our guiding post. And on everything we do, therefore, we can sort of defend that position. What's actually happening is society's trust in us is actually going down. And one of the reasons it's happening is actually, although I'm a great believer in digital technology, I'm a great believer in some of the opportunities the changing world is kind of bringing for us, and it's happening very quickly. But actually, the old models no longer work exactly. And I think Keith's Port Sunlight room, for me, summed it up. You've got 12 people in that room, many of whom are operating to different trade bodies, many of whom have kind of different regulatory structures, some of whom are global, some of which are UK. And actually, in the kind of world of art and science that we work in, it is about analytics, it is about strategy, but it's also about creativity, and Sarah's perspective from Mother on that was a good reminder. But in that kind of world that we're in, this is very complex. This is becoming more difficult. It is about integration. It is about stuff that goes across the UK. We had Guy, Chief Executive of the ASA, came to speak to the AA Council at the last meeting, and his big point was, forget what we're trying to do in the UK. This sits as part of a wider European agenda. This sits as part of a wider global dialogue. And actually, whatever we might think in the UK, be in no doubt. I mean, Brussels have got an agenda around some of this stuff as well. So it comes back to first principles. We've got a simple decision to make. The simple decision can be, we're really clear where our line in the sand's been. We've had that for decades. We're going to stick with that line in the sand and defend our right to advertise, broadly. And although the world's more complicated, other people can work out those difficulties. That's not our collective tripartite responsibility. That's an option. And when I became president 1 year ago, Gavin said, very good advice, Gavin said, you only have so much time to spend. It's quite important you pick, one or two issues. And talking to people, discussing with Scilla, with Tim, quite quickly for me, the big issue became clear. It's actually this issue about what does it mean to step up and take more responsibility in the world we're now in. And to my mind, there is no choice, actually. We have to do it, because if we don't do it, sooner or later, that responsibility, that privilege of self-regulation, organising our own affairs, will be taken away from us. And I guess the key point, therefore, we talked a bit about the why, and I think Richard did a brilliant articulation of that in his Only Way is Ethics. We've talked about some of the what. The big question, and we're not answering that today, actually, but the big question we need to start to answer is how. What does it actually mean? And all I want to offer is just a couple of perspectives on that as we close the session this morning. In my mind, the way the Advertising Association has worked brilliantly over a period of years, and the way that the self-regulatory system has worked brilliantly over a period of years, is that actually the three key parts of it, the brands, the agencies, and the media owners, actually ultimately recognise there's a wider responsibility. They sit around a table, they discuss stuff together. Richard was reminding me just earlier this morning that the 30 Club, when it was first set up, was actually to deal with regulation, to do with how you kind of manage affairs in society. And it was as simple as getting the 10 big advertisers, the 10 big media owners, and the 10 big agencies together to kind of sit around a room and agree stuff together. And actually it sort of moved on from there. But we have to collectively find a way to deal with some of these complex issues. And by crossing the line and saying, yes, we are going to hold our hand up, we are going to work out actually how we deal with some of these issues requires some judgment. And the way the Advertising Association has worked historically is rather brilliant. There's no hard power. We can't tell anyone what to do. It's funded by a bunch of other trade bodies. The people who sit around the table are big, strong clients. They're big, strong media owners. They're very strong individual trade associations for key sectors like television or the agencies or whatever it might be. But actually, the way it's done it is in my mind, two very important things. One is about an evidence-based approach. And I thought what Paddy said earlier was extremely important. Proportionate evidence-based approach. That's, I think, a very key principle. Another is actually about influence and persuasion. At the end of the day, we're in the persuasion business. And actually, this is about getting the right arguments and the right evidence and persuading. And where there are controversial sectors, sitting down, and the AA can be a catalyst for getting the right people in industry sectors to work through and come up with an approach and avoid some of the intervention that might otherwise come. And the danger for us all, if we don't take a more proactive approach, is over time, trust in the whole advertising industry gets chipped away, chipped away, chipped away. And there will be constraints put in place that we don't like. So we have to kind of work out, frankly, how to deal with some of these issues ourselves. And it comes back to, I guess, at its simplest, we've tackled in the last few years the economic importance of advertising, and the advertising pay stuff's done that really well. We've begun to talk about, I think very effectively, the benefits to society of advertising, job creation, some of the investment in the creative industries. The new AdPace report today talks very much about some of the television, sport, culture that's underpinned by advertising. And in a kind of world that we're in now, we can't ignore the responsibility agenda. We can't pretend it doesn't exist. In a kind of managed way, that has to be part of our agenda. And what we agreed at the last AA Council meeting, we've had a year where we've been debating and discussing this, but we agreed in principle this is a line we should cross. And we've agreed that we need to work out something of a values framework. How are we going to do that? We've agreed we need to look at certain areas and try and get some evidence. We've agreed there are some hot spots in particular at the moment that will be good areas to start, particularly as relates to things to do with kids. But it boils down to a very simple choice. Do we want to be reactive and defend the status quo, or do we want to be proactive and keep the initiative and take the leadership position in working through these issues together? So I hope you found it a very stimulating morning. I have to say, I think it's been brilliant. I think there's been some excellent speakers. I think we've managed to touch upon all sorts of different areas and issues. But what becomes clear is it's a complex world. It's a fast-changing world. It's a world full of opportunity. But I, for one, would like to remain in control of our destiny in that world rather than have it decided for us. So you may not agree with that, though. So there is one question before I've got a few thanks to give. So the question, which hopefully is going to be here, is back to the theme, is it time for a new deal? Now, very simple. You've got three choices. Yes, get on with it. No, we're doing enough already. Or maybe, but we'd like to have 5 more years of lead debates before we finally decide. Please do vote. Okay, well, that seems pretty clear-cut, doesn't it? And broadly very encouraging, I think. So I guess for me, just in summing it up, we have been wrestling with these issues for the last year at the council level, and I know many of the other trade associations and industry groups, as well as many individual companies and media owners have been thinking about these issues. But I think that's extremely encouraging, that at a conference like this, with the calibre of people that we've had here this morning, hearing some of the debate, there's a clear consensus that, yes, we need to kind of get on and wrestle with these issues, which I think Tim and the team can take as a sort of mandate to continue that work. It has to be about joining together. It has to be about the wider good of actually cooperation. And I think several people have made the point this morning. Pretty much everyone who works in this industry, decent, honest people with integrity who want to make a difference. And we're all in businesses now where it's not as simple as just making profit. It's about a wider responsibility. There's a generation of people coming through that expect that from us. And as industry leaders, we have to work together to find the way forward. It won't be easy. In a way, it's the hard road to choose. But it's clearly a way I think we need to go. So I really appreciate that. 2 final things as we wrap up. You've all got the opportunity to do 360 feedback. Please do it. It will only take you a minute. Is it on the iPads? It's on the iPad, so please do not leave here without doing a minute of your time just to do a 360 feedback. That will be really helpful to the organisers as we sort of consider how we do things in the future. And lastly, I just want to say a big thank you to 3 sets of people, really, over and above all of you for coming, so that almost goes without saying. But I want to say thank you to everyone who organised this morning. There's been, I think, a lot of preparation and planning goes into an event like this. So for everyone who's been involved in the organisation, I think a massive thank you. I think we should give them a round of applause. I think every single contributor who's come and actually been prepared to give some time, in some cases not feeling too good, Keith looking at you, coughing and spluttering there in the front. But thank you so much everyone who's given up their time. I think you can't have an event like this without people actually making a really good contribution and coming and stimulating and provoking the debate. So let's say a big thank you again to all of our contributors. And I would like to say a big thank you to Scilla and all of the board who do great work to kind of govern what the AA do, Tim and the executive team who do such work day in, day out, but also every single person here who actually does make a contribution throughout the year over and above the day job. We've all got busy day jobs. We've all got a lot that fills our time. But actually, the fact that we are able to control our own destiny and self-regulate and look after our own affairs is down 100% to people giving up their spare time and actually being prepared to go the extra mile. So that sense of responsibility and being part of a wider industry that you're contributing to, I'd just like to thank everyone who's given time in the last year and who is planning to give time again in the next year. So thank you for coming. I hope you found it a stimulating morning. And after you've done your feedback, you're allowed to go and get some lunch. Thank you.